Hello everybody, and welcome. This is Woolrig. We're on episode 29 of Infinity Evolved. I've been kind of busy. I've decided to scrap the idea for this spawn room because my main reason for doing that was to get ender pearls. And if you look here, I currently have 93 ender pearls. That's just coming off this cursed earth in here. And I even have the light on right now. So as you can see, the light doesn't completely hit all of the cursed earth, so it's actually doing pretty well because right at the corners I'll still get a few mob spawns, and those have been staying pretty active. I also did go and completely surround the room with these grinders, and I've got them all hooked up to the ducting, so the items are all coming back to here. I've got covers on this stuff to just kind of make it look a little nicer, so you can see that pipe goes down there. This piece of pipe here is what's called a dense item duct, and if we look at the item ducts here, the dense one, it says it increased the path length dramatically, and so we make that by just simply adding a piece of pulverized lead to a regular item duct. And what that does is the items will always go to the closest inventory first, and so by doing this, this guy actually ends up being the furthest one in the calculation. So I don't have an exact number of like how far that is compared to everything else, but it should always be the farthest one. So this piece over here should always be the closest, which of course has the controller down there below the floor. As you can see, I've gotten quite a bit of mob essence out of this. I've got those 3 tanks full, and I've actually put a drum down here that can hold another 256 barrels, and it's about 67 barrels full so far. So all told, this is doing pretty well. And one of the side effects of this is I'm getting a lot of enchanted armor. And this is going to come in handy later because I can actually pull the enchants off of the armors and weapons here, and then I can use that to craft it into whatever I want. So for this episode, I want to get a head start, not a head start, but I want to get started on, good, that's done. I want to get started on upgrading my assembly platform through Applied Energistics. So we've got this little setup here, and this is, in all honesty, this is extremely anemic. This is, you know, this is where we start. Very simple. Gets us, you know, some basic recipes that we can craft. And I do want to queue up while I'm working on some things here. Just see if I can make another 20 of those cables and let those go. So this is really pretty basic. And one of the troubles is that because I've got 2 interfaces talking to a single molecular assembler, if both of these are trying to use the assembler, they can't. They can only use one at a time. So really, in order to make this more efficient, I should put assemblers kind of all the way around these interfaces, and because they don't take any channels, it really doesn't bother me. It just takes power. And that way then, if this assembler has multiple recipes that it can craft at the same time, it needs to be able to have multiple molecular assemblers around it so that it can actually craft those items. Otherwise it has to wait, kind of wait its turn until the assemblers are ready. And that's going to craft for a while. So what I'm going to do is I've gone ahead and crafted 32 interfaces and 31 assemblers, which that took quite a long time to build. So I went ahead and did that ahead of time, and I've picked those numbers. Oops, I get stuck in that torch every once in a while. I don't know why. I picked those numbers because I've got 2 interfaces here already, and I've already got 1 molecular assembler. So all told, when I get done, there's going to be 32 interfaces with 32 assemblers. And I'm going to use this nice little pit that I dug here, and I should probably make it one or two more deeper. Let's go one more. Don't forget our ring, we can fly. So one more deeper, I think, should get me do the trick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually lay out these interfaces in a pattern like so. And then I'm going to put molecular assemblers on the inside like this. And that's layer one. I'm then going to repeat this process, but I'm going to stack the assemblers that way and alternate the interfaces this way. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating one of the more compact and one of the more optimized configurations for molecular assemblers and interfaces. And when I get all done, I will have 32 interfaces, which will essentially take one whole side of my controller to power for channels. And fortunately, we can take advantage of some cabling techniques that makes this really easy to build. And the nice thing is, by doing this, what we're going to end up with is that every one of these interfaces, except for the very bottom and the very top, the majority of the interfaces should have a 3 molecular assemblers accessible to them. So if we look at this guy, for example, he can talk to that one, and that one, and actually he'll end up being able to talk to the one on the top. So he'll have 4, in fact. And we're just going to go ahead, I'm just going to go ahead and repeat this pattern all the way up until all of my interfaces and molecular assemblers are finished. The whole time I'm going to be leaving that little hole in the middle, because that is actually where our cable connections are going to run in order to connect this all up to channels and get everything talking. So we'll just keep building our stack here. And a few more, and we should be able to get this done up. And what this is going to do is this is going to give us a, whoops, wrong one. This is going to give us a lot of interfaces that we can put recipes into. Because right now, those 2 interfaces that I have, they're full. So I can't, I've got to take recipes out if I want to put more recipes in. And that's not really ideal. The whole point of this setup is that I should be able to, have basically everything just kind of programmed and ready to go. And I do see a problem here. So if I place an interface here, it's going to try and connect to that cable. So I am going to make sure and grab an anchor, which I probably don't have. So I need to find, is it the knife? Yeah, the Certus Quartz knife, if you remember, allows us to make anchors. We've made some of those. The ingot of iron, there we go. We've made some of those in the past because they are important for facades. I'll just go ahead and throw an anchor on that so that when I go up here and grab the last 2 interfaces, I can place them down and they won't connect. But before I do that, I want to make sure that they've finished making their cables, which they have. And that's important because I need these cables. I need to make a total of 9 dense cable. If we look at our cabling, so the standard ones we've been making are Fluix, this Fluix cable, just basic glass cables. We did go ahead and make, of course, the smart cable. That's the guys down here. Pop the cover off. One of those was a cover. Shift click. So smart cable like that allows us to see how many channels are in use. And the next step up from regulars is regular cable is dense cable. And dense cable allows us to actually, it's a much larger block. So if we put it down here, it's a much larger block and it allows other regular cables to connect to it. And the thing with dense cable is that it can transfer 32 channels in all, while regular cable can only transfer 8. One of the added bonuses is that the dense cable Normally, if we're connecting to something like a crafting terminal or the pattern terminal, anything that is a multi-block, it has to connect to the smaller cable. But anything that's a full block, like the molecular assembler or an interface, so let's go ahead and just pop this interface off. That's going to let loose all of the recipes we had in it. So if we connect to either one of these, the cable connects right up, no problem, because this is a full block space. So we don't have to put in a smaller cable in order to make this work. And I should be able to pop these all off. I've got an inventory full of garbage, so let me clear that out real quick. That should do it. And that guy stays connected. I added another 4K of crafting storage because the 1K wasn't enough to make all 32 interfaces when I was setting this up. So we're going to go ahead and finish off that one. So the anchor's there, so that protects us from connecting there. We'll get that in there, and last thing is our last two molecular assemblers. So as I said, these top ones, they're only going to be able to talk to 3 assemblers, but the rest of them all the way down, like if we look at this guy, he can talk to 1, 2, 3, 4. So he can actually do 4 things simultaneously, and same thing with the corners. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So the majority of our interfaces can talk to 4 devices, or 4 assemblers, but some of them can only talk to 3, which is fine. I'm going to pull that out because I have a feeling I am going to need to get... I should have put everything down one more level. Let's do that. Let's pop these off and go down one more level so that I've got room to move up here. So we'll just put these down at the bottom, like so. And that one. It's kind of hard with all of those patterns in there. Just trying to figure out what's the valid item and what's the pattern. And I do have a single piece of dense cable, so you can see if I put this down, it connects to all 4 of the interfaces, and then as we saw up top there, the interfaces, the molecular assemblers can connect through the interfaces, and so on and so forth. I mean, they can connect all the way through each other. But the trick is that even with the dense cable, each connection can only handle 8 total channels connected to it. So if we want to make sure that we have a full connection, I actually want to fill this center with dense cable. So I'm going to need about 8 more pieces because, of course, there's 8 levels here because we've got 4 interfaces on each level. 4 times 8 is 32. Simple math. Anyway, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and finish making the rest of the dense cables I need for that, and I will be right back. Okay, there we go. So I've got the center of this thing lined with dense cable, and I could make a bunch of dense cable and run it all the way over here to the controller and plug it into this side, but that would kind of be unnecessary because I've already got cabling that runs over here, and even though it's only the single, the small little 8-channel cable, I can actually make use of this. But as you can see, I'm already using all 8 channels on this line, so I need to do something to be able to first free up a channel, and then also find a way to allow all 32 channels of this assembly monstrosity to come across the 8-channel, the smaller cable, and talk directly to one of these sides. And fortunately, Applied Energistics gives us a nice little device called a point-to-point tunnel. And this is one of the more complicated mechanisms in Applied Energistics. I don't understand why people are confused by it, but they are. But I should say that I should preface that I work as a network engineer in part of my job, so I do this kind of thing all the time. So what a point-to-point tunnel allows me to do is, let's just put down a piece of cable here. I can stick a point-to-point tunnel on either side of this, and what this allows me to do is to essentially connect, in this case, an ME network over top of another ME network. So what I can do is, if I do something like this, for example, the cable in the middle here is not, in this configuration, is not the same network as this dense cable that's coming out the interface over here. The network that this dense cable connects to is actually going to be the same as this one over here, not this one. And I don't know if that helps clear anything up or not, but I think if I show you how we're going to use it, it might help. So one of the things we run into is that first off, we've got all 8 channels of this side already used up. And again, I could put a whole bunch of dense cable in and spend a lot of resources doing that, but I would much rather work smarter instead of harder. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to break this connection here. And then I'm going to probably remove this block. Let's go fly up here next to our controller. And we're going to take 2 of these point-to-point tunnel interfaces, and we're going to stick them right on the side of the controller like this. And what that's going to allow us to do is to actually send all 32 channels of those sides into those interfaces. So those become the input portion of our network. I'm then going to need to get some more cabling. Let's go ahead and throw this guy back in. I don't think I had to take that one out. Probably didn't need to. Let me get some more cables. I'll just grab some covered cables. Let's go ahead and make them smart cables. I think all I need to do is add redstone and glowstone. There we go. And we got ourselves some more smart cable. So what I can do now is I'm going to go ahead and break this connection right about there. And I'm going to take these other point-to-points now. I'm going to put one of them here. And what I should see is that I've immediately, by breaking this, this was using 1, 2, 3, 4 channels to connect to this kind of cluster of machines. So I freed up 4 channels, and then I put this device here. So that's now using another channel. So I should be using 5, which we are. The last thing I'm going to need to do, though, is that I need to get these tunnel interfaces connected up to the primary network. And so with that, I'm just going to go ahead and stick this here, and oops, that there. We're going to kind of run around like this, and then another one like that. And that should all connect up. And if we look at the inside, this one here, we've now got 7 channels in use, which is perfect because I need 1 more. And if we count them up, we should have 1, 2, so the 2 point-to-point interfaces, each one of those is taking a channel. Because this line, the point-to-point is facing towards the controller, so this cable cannot connect to that side of the controller. It's actually connected to the back of the point-to-point tunnel interface. And so you'll see on the smart cable here, we see our 1 channel. It comes around. We connect to this one. We now have 2 channels that come around. Those 2 channels go up this cable and meet up with this, which connects to this side of the interface. So these 2 tunnels are actually connected into the whole network through this interface. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the last piece of this that I need to do is make a little device called a memory card. And this is real simple. Just some basic ingredients there. And we're going to use this to tie these point-to-point tunnels from the input, which is this side, to the output, which is going to be that one over there. So I'm going to shift click on this, and you'll see that I've saved my settings. And I don't think, oh, it does tell me that it's a point-to-point tunnel and saved in there. So now I've saved the settings for this tunnel device as an input, and if I right click this, it goes offline, comes back online. It tells me that the settings were loaded successfully. And so now, if I go ahead and take my smart cable and I come off of here, what you'll see is that it's going to connect, and it's using 4 channels. Because this interface, you can basically think of this interface here as the side of the controller over here. So that cable is in fact connected directly to the side of the controller, but we're doing it over a point-to-point network. And we can do the exact same thing with the other one. And so the reason I have 2 of these is because one of these is going to be fully utilized. So if we shift right click on this guy, we save our settings. I'll come over here now, and right about, sure, I'll put it there, just so we can get a good visual on this. And we'll right click it, that loads the settings, and when we put this next piece of dense cable in, we should see, in this case, 31 channels connect. And that's because I had to take these 2 pieces and bring them back upstairs. And once I get these last 2 pieces put in, we should see that all 32 channels are in fact in use, which they are. And we can actually take this anchor off too, because we don't need it anymore. So that is point-to-point tunneling in a nutshell, and it's very important because, like I said, it allows us to save a lot of resources by not having to run dense cable all over the place. And as you can see, it allows us to do some really nice things because we can actually end up taking these point-to-points. So like this one here, the one here on this side, this guy only has 8 channels in use, and it's hard to tell that. I have to kind of remember which interfaces I've connected. There are ways that I can name these devices, but I generally don't do that because it's easy enough for me to just remember which ones I've used. Something else that I've done in the past is that if you'll notice with these cables, they come in different colors. That's because we can actually color these, so we can use different dyes, and we can color the cable. So one of the things that I've done in the past just to help organize things is that I will just put take the first cable off the line, and I will give it a color, and then I'll do the same thing on the output side. So I'll use the last cable on the line and give it a color, and that way I can just kind of tie the 2 interfaces together. Because, like I said, right now this is only using 8 channels, or excuse me, 4 channels. It can only use a maximum of 8 because that's all that this cable can use. But what I can do is that this point-to-point is actually more of what's referred to as a point-to-multipoint. So I can have one input with multiple outputs. So right now, it's just a 1-to-1, but I could take another point-to-point tunnel and create it as a second output, which is extremely powerful. The only thing that you can't do is that you can't nest them. So if I were, say I were to come over here and put a point-to-point tunnel here and run this cable off of it, it would absolutely work except for this interface, because this point-to-point tunnel can't go back through another point-to-point tunnel. It doesn't work like that. So you can only nest these networks 1 deep. You can't really get any more complicated than that. So that's kind of point-to-point tunnels in a nutshell. I understand they're confusing, and by all means, if you want more clarification or need help trying to understand it better, ask me a question, because, like I said, I do actually, I do kind of do this stuff in my day job. So these types of techniques are very fluent to me. That looks like that's the wrong color. Anyway, so now we can use those interfaces down there, but if you'll notice, we kind of buried some of them. We buried a lot of them. They're all underground. So the ones at the surface, I can come here and I can throw my patterns in, but there's a better way. As always, there's a better way. And what that is we need to make ourselves another terminal. And in fact, we need to make what's called an interface terminal. So let's see what we have for parts. Looks like we're just missing an interface. Okay, well, that shouldn't be too hard. We'll go ahead and load up a few of the items we need here. Let's find our interface. There's that guy. What's he need? Formation and annihilation cores. Go ahead and move those guys over. What else do we need? We probably need these seeds. And that should be enough. So let's go ahead and make an interface. And I probably have the rest of the ingredients in this terminal. You kind of have to be careful with multiple crafting terminals because you'll leave stuff in them and forget where it's at. So what I will do is I'll get this all cleaned up eventually, but we'll just slap it there for now. Because we pulled out the two interfaces that were here, we freed up some channels. So I should be able to use this. And what this does is this shows me all of the interfaces that are connected to my network. And it tells us what device they're connected to. So we see we've got two that are connected to chests, and that would be one of them here and the other one's downstairs. And we've got those corresponding recipes in there. I've got two that are connected to hoppers, and that's feeding the pulverizer and the furnace. And then I've got 32 that are connected to molecular assemblers. And if we scroll all the way down, looks like we got one on a pulverizer. Oh, right, that's an input. Yep. We see that one interface had all of these. And what's really nice with this is if you look at how these are laid out, each line here is actually a separate interface. So with the molecular assembler setups, what I like to do is let's go ahead and pull all of these recipes out and start at the top. I like to start filling these in the columns instead of the rows, because what that does is that essentially that makes sure that we are kind of distributing ourselves across all of our interfaces in an efficient manner. So if I load up all of my recipes, I will have essentially one recipe in each interface. And once I get to the bottom, I start over again at the top and basically end up putting a second recipe in each interface. And this way I shouldn't kind of overload a single interface with too many recipes, and I'll kind of have everything split out pretty nice and be able to get some pretty fast assembly going. But that's really how pretty simple mechanism there. Of course, what we need now is that we need more of these guys, because this is a single kind of crafting unit, so to speak. So there's 3 blocks to it, but it can only do one, it can only take one request at a time. So it can do multiple components in a crafting recipe, but it can only take one request at a time. So we're going to have to build some more of those, which means we need some more patterns. Let's go ahead and queue up some more blank patterns, like, I don't know about that many, and let those craft. Another point-to-point tunnel crafted here, and I've got my memory card programmed with the entry point there that has the available channels on it. I'll go ahead and stick a cable on this, and we see right off the bat nothing lights up. And if we come here, we'll just hang our crafting CPU off of it, our current one. That guy and that guy. This multi-block structure should assemble, and we should see that we're using one channel. So with this one channel and these 4 over here, I know that that point-to-point tunnel up there is now using 5 channels. And I've gone ahead and crafted a bunch, or started making some more of the recipes, so I can make more of the crafting components. So coprocessor, 4K storage, and a crafting monitor. That's a handy thing just to be able to visually see what each CPU is working on. So all I need to do is craft some more of those, and that's going to take some time because I don't have any speed upgrades in these things. They can take speed upgrades. I don't have any, so that's something I'm going to need to work on, but unfortunately it looks like we are out of time for this episode. So for now, this is Warwick. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.